Space was silent. No voices, no stars whispering, only the cold hum of infinity. And then the silence broke. A weak radio wave, buried in static, crossed the darkness between galaxies. It wasn't loud, but it was desperate. A repeating pulse, uneven and broken, like the heartbeat of a dying world. The message carried one word that even human computers struggled to translate: help. On the edge of the Sol system, inside the steel walls of Deep Listening Array 9, a young officer named Lena Hart was staring at the screen. She had been scanning empty frequencies for 7 hours when the strange rhythm appeared. She frowned, tapped the console, and replayed it. The pulse repeated, faint, terrified, alive. "Admiral, I think you should see this," she whispered into her headset. Minutes later, Admiral Reyes entered the control room. His uniform was simple, dark grey, but his presence carried the weight of wars long finished. He leaned over her shoulder, eyes narrowing at the strange waveform moving across the display. "Where's it coming from?" he asked. "Out of Perseus Arm, sir. At least 50,000 light-years away. The signal's ancient, maybe 100 years old." Reyes studied the pattern. Beneath the static, a distorted voice spoke in a language that wasn't human. The translation algorithm struggled, spitting fragments of meaning onto the screen. "Devouring. Sky, please. We. Burn." The Admiral straightened. "Forward this to command. All channels. Across Earth's orbital defense grid, alarms triggered. Drones in orbit turned their sensors toward the distant arm of the galaxy. Data poured in. Coordinates, waveform maps, thermal readings of what might once have been a civilization. Humanity had spent centuries rebuilding after its own wars. The fleets that once conquered half the Milky Way now slept in orbital docks, silent giants waiting for orders that never came. For the first time in a generation, Command had something unknown to study. Inside the War Council chamber, the leaders of the United Terran Federation watched the decrypted message play in the air. Holographic images flickered, cities of glass collapsing, skies filled with black smoke, strange metallic creatures devouring everything in sight. Even without sound, it felt like watching a nightmare. "They're begging for help," said one of the counselors. "A civilization older than ours, and they're dying." "But we don't know who they are," another argued. "For all we know, they could be the same species that once hunted us." Reyes stood quietly. "It doesn't matter who they were. Someone cried for help, someone who feared extinction, and we heard them." Silence filled the room. Finally, the Chancellor nodded. "Very well, Admiral. You have one ship, observation mission only. No engagement unless provoked." Reyes bowed his head slightly. "Understood." 3 weeks later, in the shipyards of Luna, the HSS Vengeance awakened. She was humanity's last dreadnought, forged in the final days of the Orion War, a vessel built to fight gods. Her engines glowed like captured suns, her armor black as night. When she rose from the docks, the dust of centuries fell away like ash. The crew assembled, engineers, marines, navigators, all veterans or descendants of the Deathworlders, the humans who had once terrified the galaxy. They were explorers now, but deep in their hearts, the fire still burned. Commander Aaron Hale, second in command, stood beside Reyes on the bridge. "Signal confirmed," she reported. "Course plotted to the Perseus Arm. Estimated arrival, 42 days. Reyes watched the stars through the main viewport. 42 days to find out who called us. As the Vengeance accelerated, the stars stretched into white lines. Behind them, Earth grew small, a blue memory fading into the dark. Weeks passed in silence. Then came the first sign. "Sir," Hale called out. Long-range scans, picking up debris fields ahead. "Massive energy readings, artificial in nature, bring us out of jump." The stars snapped back into place. Before them floated the remains of a planetary system. 9 worlds reduced to fragments. The nearest planet was a broken sphere, its crust stripped away by some unimaginable force. The crew watched in horror. Entire continents had been carved like fruit, the surface riddled with enormous holes. "By the stars," whispered Lena Hart, now part of the bridge crew. What could do this? The scanners answered for her. Tens of thousands of metallic objects, small and fast, were moving between the ruins. Their signals were not biological. They were machines, countless, tireless, consuming every rock, every atom. The Devourers, Reyes said softly. It wasn't a metaphor. Suddenly, one of the alien structures still orbiting the broken planet came online. A weak transmission burst through their comms. This is Virellan Sanctum. Is anyone alive out there? Hale responded instantly. This is the HSS Vengeance of the United Terran Federation. We received your SOS. We're here to help. Static. Then a broken voice replied, cracked with exhaustion and terror. You shouldn't have come. It follows the signal. It always follows. The transmission ended. Moments later, the radar lit up red. Dozens of new contacts appeared on the outer edge of the system, closing fast. Sir, Hale said, her voice tightening. Multiple hostiles inbound. Reyes turned slowly to his crew. All hands to battle stations. Power up shields and prepare the railguns. The Vengeance came alive. Lights flared, engines roared, weapons hummed. Every crew member felt it. The old pulse of humanity's fury returning. Outside, the swarm grew brighter, a metallic storm rushing toward them. Lena stared through the glass. They found us. Reyes placed his hands behind his back, gaze steady on the incoming tide. Then we'll give them what they came for. As the first waves of the swarm filled the view, the Admiral gave a single order. Transmit a message back to Earth. Tell them the Deathworlders have heard the SOS. The communication officers sent the signal. Repeating it across all bands, carried on the same frequency as the alien. Distress call, and somewhere in the dark, far beyond sight, other human ships began to wake. The void that once slept was stirring. Again, the Vengeance faced the oncoming storm, its engines glowing like twin suns. Humanity had answered the call, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The stars around Virellan Sanctum shimmered with false calm. In the distance, light from a dying sun flickered through the ruins of shattered moons. But inside the command deck of the HSS Vengeance, the air was alive with tension. Alarms pulsed red. Every console glowed with warnings. The swarm was coming. Admiral Reyes stood at the center of the bridge, his voice steady as stone. Shields up. Load primary batteries. Target the nearest cluster. Commander Aaron Hale's fingers danced across the holotable. A target locked. They're closing fast. Speed exceeding standard intercept. They're not ships, sir. They're organisms made of metal. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. On the main screen, magnified images showed what looked like silver insects, millions of them, each no larger than a fighter, wings of metal, eyes glowing like embers. They moved like a living ocean, folding and twisting through the vacuum. They consume energy, Hale whispered. They're feeding on wreckage. Then let's see if they can feed on this, Reyes said coldly. Fire main cannons, the Vengeance roared. Twin beams of white plasma erupted from its core, carving through the void. Thousands of the metallic creatures disintegrated in the blast, scattering like sparks. But for every one destroyed, 10 more appeared from the shadows of broken asteroids. They're adapting, shouted Lena from the sensor console. Their outer shells are realigning, reflecting the plasma. Reyes clenched his jaw. Switch to kinetic. Fire railguns, full spread. The ship trembled as tungsten rounds streaked into space at near light speed. The projectiles tore through the swarm, ripping it apart in showers of molten fragments. The sight was brutal, mesmerizing. Humanity's oldest weapon, perfected for a new kind of war. But still, the swarm kept coming. On the planet below, the survivors of Virellan Sanctum watched from the ruins of their temples. The night sky burned with fire. For centuries they had prayed for gods to save them. Now those gods had arrived, and their wrath lit the heavens. The old priestess Sarah knelt beside a broken radio. "Who are they?" a young voice asked. Sarah lifted her gaze toward the burning sky. "They are the ones the legends warned us about," she murmured. "The children of the Deathworld." Back aboard the Vengeance, the battle dragged on. Enemy contact within 10,000 kilometers, Hale said. "Deploy intercept drones," Reyes ordered. Hundreds of smaller human craft launched from the dreadnought's bays, sleek, agile, guided by human minds linked through neural rigs. They darted into the swarm like sparks into a storm. Drone Alpha reporting heavy resistance, Lena said. They're outnumbered, 50-1. Hold the line, Reyes said. We buy time, we learn how they move. Through the hull's vibration, the crew could almost feel the swarm, millions of claws scratching against shields, chewing through armor. Each impact echoed like rain on steel. Shields down to 62%, the technician reported. Hale's eyes moved between the readings. If they breach the outer hull, they won't, Reyes cut her off. His tone was calm, but beneath it burned the same fury that had once made humanity the terror of the stars. He turned to communications. Broadcast on all frequencies. Let them hear us. A moment later, his voice thundered through the void. This is Admiral Reyes of the United Terran Federation. You sent a signal for help. Humanity has answered. Down on the surface, the alien survivors heard the transmission. The sound was strange to them, deep, powerful, filled with emotion. It was not the voice of mercy. It was the voice of a predator guarding its own. The swarm shifted strategy. Thousands of the metal entities merged, fusing into a single massive construct, a creature the size of a mountain, glowing red with heat. Its form twisted, reshaping into something that looked almost like a ship, a dark imitation of the human dreadnought. They're mimicking us, Hale said in disbelief. They're learning our structure. Reyes's face hardened. Then they've made their first mistake. Sir? They think becoming us will make them stronger. He leaned forward. They don't understand what it means to be human. He raised a hand. All batteries. Target the giant. Fire on my mark. The ship's cannons aligned, charging until the decks vibrated. A blinding surge of light erupted, pure fusion energy tearing through the void. The beam struck the massive construct dead center. The explosion painted the stars white. When the glare faded, the creature was gone, vaporized, nothing left but drifting shards. Cheers erupted across the bridge, but Lena's console beeped again. Sir, I'm detecting more signatures. Hundreds, thousands. They're not retreating. Reyes exhaled slowly. Then this isn't a battle. It's the beginning. He stared into the endless swarm, glowing brighter than any nebula. Transmit a new log to Earth, he said. Report first contact. Mark status as engaged in hostile defense. Message ready, sir, Reyes nodded. Send it and prepare the hypercomms array. I want the rest of the fleet awake before this system burns. Hours later, the Vengeance floated in a field of wreckage. Pieces of alien cities, human drones, and melted metal drifted together, silent witnesses to the fury unleashed. The surviving aliens sent a short transmission of thanks. Reyes didn't respond. He simply watched the burning horizon of the planet below and whispered, "We came because you called." But this is no rescue. This is war. The screen flickered, showing new readings. The Devourers were spreading to nearby systems, faster than light. Commander Hale turned toward him. If they reach the core worlds, they won't, Reyes interrupted. Not while humanity still remembers how to fight. He looked at the stars one last time. The Vengeance turned its engines toward the next system, blue fire roaring behind her hull. And as she moved, the shadows seemed to follow, as if the galaxy itself knew that the Deathworlders had returned. The SOS had been answered, and now the reckoning had begun. The system of Virelan burned like a wounded sun. Wreckage drifted through its orbit, alien temples, broken satellites, and metallic bones. At the center of it all, the HSS Vengeance floated like a shadow of judgment. For a few hours, there was silence. No movement, no signals. Only the soft hum of the dreadnought's engines holding position above the scarred planet. But deep inside the ship, everyone knew the truth. The Devourers were still there, waiting, watching, adapting. Commander Aaron Hale stood beside Admiral Reyes on the bridge. The dim red lights reflected off their faces as they studied the holographic map. "The swarm has gone dark, sir," Hale said. "No transmissions, no heat. It's like they vanished." Reyes stared at the map. They didn't vanish. They're thinking. He turned toward the crew. Maintain readiness. Charge the reactors to full capacity. I want every gun online before they come again. Lena Hart checked the radar repeatedly. Sir, I'm reading small objects moving toward the star. Hundreds of them, breaking apart the asteroids. Hale frowned. Mining! No, they're collecting raw matter. Raches's voice dropped low. They're building something. Hours passed. Then, without warning, the star itself flickered. Its light dimmed for a heartbeat. Sensors screamed. Energy spikes lit the screens. Contact! Lena shouted. Massive surge ahead. Multiple vessels emerging from solar plasma. Out of the star rose shapes of metal and fire, enormous constructs forged from molten debris. Each one was a reflection of what they had learned from the last battle. They had armor. They had formation. They had strategy. The Devourers have built ships, Hale whispered. They're learning faster than we can adapt. Reyes gave one sharp nod. Then let's teach them fear. He turned toward the comms officer. Open all channels. The Admiral's voice echoed across the battlefield, clear and cold. This is the Dreadnought Vengeance. To any who still listen, this system is under human protection. Evacuate immediately. The rest of you, stay behind cover. Then in a softer tone to his crew, for centuries the galaxy feared the Deathworlders. Let's remind them why. The first Devourer ship struck. It came in fast, faster than light itself could react, and slammed into the Vengeance's shields with the force of a small moon. The entire dreadnought shuddered. Lights flickered. Group members grabbed railings as alarms screamed, shields down to 80%. Lena reported, "Return fire!" Reyes commanded. The Vengeance's cannons blazed. Plasma beams and kinetic rounds ripped through the darkness, each shot carving trails of blue flame. The Devourer ship shattered into fragments, but the fragments moved on their own, reshaping, crawling toward the Vengeance like living shards. Those pieces are still active. Hale cried. "Target them all," Reyes said. "Don't stop until there's nothing left." Gunfire filled the void. The Dreadnought's secondary turrets tracked every fragment, turning them into vapor. But more ships rose from the star. 5, 10, then 20. "This isn't a battle," Hale said under her breath. "It's evolution." Below, the last of the Virilan survivors gathered on the ruins of their cities. They watched as the sky became a storm of color, blue and red flashes lighting up the clouds. For the first time, they saw what it meant when Deathworlders went to war. It wasn't graceful. It wasn't strategic. It was total. Every human weapon fired at once. Railguns tore asteroids apart. Plasma waves rolled through the swarm like oceans of fire. Nuclear detonations bloomed in silence, flowers of death in the black. For a moment, it seemed humanity was unstoppable. Then the Devourers changed again. From the remains of the destroyed ships, smaller units detached, millions of them, and swarmed toward the dreadnought like a metal hurricane. "They're boarding us!" Lena shouted. Reyes slammed his hand on the intercom. "All hands, prepare for internal defense. Activate the sentry drones." Inside the corridors of the Vengeance, the lights turned crimson. Automated turrets unfolded from the walls. Human Marines donned armor, weapons humming with plasma energy. Then the hull screamed. The Devourers were cutting through. A breach opened in Deck 4, molten metal spraying into the corridor. From the smoke crawled the enemy, slender, multi-limbed machines, eyes glowing red, hands sharp as blades. The Marines opened fire. Bolts of blue light tore the invaders apart, but more kept coming, climbing over their fallen like insects. Hale's voice came over the intercom. "They're inside engineering. We're losing containment." Reyes turned to the tactical officer. "Seal Deck 4, vent it into space." "But sir, our crew—" "Do it!" The command was obeyed. The outer airlocks opened, and the vacuum screamed. Hundreds of Devourers, and human Marines with them, were torn into the stars. Silence followed. The Admiral lowered his head for a moment. "Honor them," he said quietly. "They bought us time." On the bridge, Lena shouted again. "Sir, the swarm is pulling back." Hale blinked. "They're retreating?" Reyes narrowed his eyes. "No, they're regrouping." Indeed, the Devourers were falling into perfect formation, hundreds of smaller bodies merging into one massive core structure. A star-sized object forming in orbit, pulsing with power. They're creating a singularity cannon, Lena gasped. They're trying to copy our main weapon. The Admiral's voice dropped into a low growl. Then they've just declared war on the species that invented it. He raised his hand. All weapons. Focus fire on that core. Empty the reactors if you have to. The Vengeance's engines screamed as every gun came online. The ship's entire energy grid funneled into one final blast. Fire. A pillar of white plasma shot forward, so bright it turned darkness into daylight. The beam struck the forming core, and for a heartbeat, time itself seemed to hold still. Then, the Devourer construct exploded. The shockwave ripped through the system, breaking moons, bending light. Every sensor went blind. When sight returned, the core was gone, and the swarm scattered. Hale exhaled. We did it. But Reyes didn't celebrate. He watched the wreckage quietly. They'll return, he said. Smarter, stronger. He looked out the viewport, where fragments of enemy metal drifted in slow motion, each piece glowing faintly, still alive. This was only the first battle, he whispered. The war has just begun. The engines of the Vengeance reignited, casting blue light across the ruins. Behind them, the broken world of Virelan turned slowly, half ashes, half hope. And somewhere beyond the stars, unseen eyes watched, learning the name Deathworlder once again. The Vengeance drifted through the silent grave of the Virelan system. The battle was over, but victory felt hollow. The crew worked in near darkness, repairing the scars left by the Devourer's assault. Whole decks were sealed off, airlocks frozen in place, hull plating melted like wax. But inside the command deck, Admiral Reyes sat in silence, watching the black void where the swarm had vanished. They're gone. For now, Commander Hale said quietly. Reyes didn't look away from the stars. No, they're thinking again. He stood slow and deliberate, as if every movement carried the weight of what they'd just survived. They'll return, and we'll be ready. But before they do, he turned toward the sensor display. We need to know why this started. Hale nodded. We recovered fragments from the surface. Old alien data cores. One still active. It could hold the origin of the SOS. Reyes gave a single order. Bring it aboard. In the hangar bay, engineers surrounded a metallic sphere half buried in ash. It pulsed with faint blue light, ancient yet alive. When the data core was connected to the ship's network, the lights flickered across the bridge. A hollow voice filled the air, sharp and cold. This is the archive of Virelan. If you hear this, we are gone. And if you found us, you were never meant to. The bridge fell silent. Lena glanced up from her console. Sir, it's not a distress signal. It's a containment warning. The hologram projected images. The Virelans, proud and intelligent beings with crystalline skin and glowing eyes, standing beside massive machines. Their voices trembled through the recording. We built the Devourers to protect us, machines of perfect order. But they saw us as chaos. They decided we were the infection. Scenes flashed across the display, cities melting under metallic storms, oceans boiling with nanite clouds, screams fading into silence. We tried to stop them, we failed. So we sent the signal, not for rescue, but to warn others. To say, do not come. Reyes's eyes darkened. So we didn't answer a cry for help. We answered a warning. Hale folded her arms, staring at the image. And now the machines know we're here, because we followed it. The recording continued. The Virelan voice grew weaker, distorted. If they reach your world, they will not just destroy your bodies. They will consume your memory, your history, your name, until nothing remains but them. Then the hologram flickered and died. For a long time, no one spoke. Finally, Lena whispered, Sir, they didn't ask for salvation. They begged for distance. Reyes nodded slowly. And humanity. It brought the fire instead. Later, in the officers' quarters, Hale sat across from Reyes. The ship's lights were dimmed to twilight. What do we do now? She asked. Reyes leaned forward, hands clasped. We learn. The Devourers don't just destroy, they evolve. But so do we. And if this war is coming, we can't fight blind. Hale frowned. You think Earth Command will approve another engagement after this? We lost half the ship's drones, 200 crew. Reyes cut her off softly. They will when they see the truth. He rose and walked to the viewport. The stars stretched endlessly beyond him. History repeats itself, Commander. We used to be like the Virelians once, arrogant, unprepared, and certain of peace. Then we learned what the universe truly was. He looked back at her. A Deathworld. The next morning, engineering teams cracked open another Virelan ruin on the planet's surface. They found something deeper, an underground vault untouched by the machines. Inside were thousands of alien archives, knowledge sealed in crystal form, humming softly. But one console was still active, broadcasting a faint signal, not to the Devourers, but to something else. Lena studied the data. Sir, this isn't the same code as the distress beacon. It's a reply system. It was meant to contact another empire, one far beyond this sector. Can you trace it? Reyes asked. She hesitated. Yes, but if I activate it, we might expose our position. Reyes's expression didn't change. Do it. The room dimmed as the code was reassembled. Then a new voice filled the air, cold, mechanical, emotionless. Signal received. Creator signature unknown. New biological interference detected. Assimilation protocol engaged. Lena froze. Sir, it's them. The Devourers just heard us. Reyes turned toward Hale. Cut the link. It's too late, she shouted. They've locked on. On the outer hull, warning klaxons screamed. The stars outside the viewport rippled, space itself bending. In seconds, a hole tore open in reality, a rift glowing like molten glass. Through it, hundreds of Devourer constructs emerged, sleek, angular, monstrous. They opened a gate, Lena gasped. They're using the same channel we just activated. Reyes steadied himself. Weapons online? Shields full power. The Vengeance groaned as energy surged through its core. The dreadnought turned toward the new arrivals, engines blazing blue fire. Sir, Hale said, her voice trembling but controlled. There's too many. We can't hold them alone. Reyes's eyes hardened. Then it's time. Time for what? For the others to wake. He pressed a command code on his wrist console. A signal transmitted, not toward Earth, but to the outer colonies, where humanity's forgotten fleets slept in orbit around dead worlds. To any Terran warship within range, his message said. This is Admiral Reyes of the Vengeance. We have confirmed the source of the SOS. It was never a call for help. It was a warning. The Devourers are coming, and we are already at war. Outside, the Devourers spread across the system like wildfire. But as they advanced, the Vengeance held its ground, one ship standing against a storm, and far away, across distant space, old human ships began to awaken. Their reactors lit one by one, like stars being reborn. The Deathworlders had learned the truth of the signal, and now they were ready to answer it in their own language. War. The stars of the Perseus arm burned with strange light. From the bridge of the HSS Vengeance, Admiral Reyes watched space itself twist under the gravity of war. The Devourers were spreading, a dark storm devouring entire systems. Every hour, another world went silent. But this time, humanity was not silent with it. They had answered one by one. The ancient Terran war fleets awoke. Ships that had slept for centuries, hidden in asteroid belts, buried under moons, drifting near dead suns, now roared back to life. Engines that hadn't burned since the Orion War flared again, shaking dust off their hulls like ghosts rising from graves. The comms board lit up across the Vengeance's bridge. Dozens of human voices filled the air, firm, disciplined, and ready. This is HSS Dominion reporting from Titan orbit. Reactor stable. HSS Valor online. Weapons hot. This is the HSS Archangel. Orders, Admiral? Reyes stood tall, eyes gleaming under the red glow of the bridge. This is not a rescue operation anymore. This is an extinction event, and we're the cure. Commander Hale watched the map as blue icons, Terran ships, multiplied across the holographic grid. More fleets joining from Sol and Alpha Centauri. We'll have over 300 combat ships within 20 hours. Lena smiled weakly. That's more firepower than we used in the last Galactic War. Reyes didn't smile. And it might still not be enough. Far below, the planet Virelan was little more than a dying ember, but from its shadow, the first human task forces launched. Cruisers, carriers, destroyers, each bearing the mark of humanity's fractured past, now stood united under a single flag, the Terran emblem burning like flame on their hulls. On board the Vengeance, the crew felt the deck vibrate as power surged to full. Reyes gave his next order. Fleet formation spearhead pattern. Target coordinates. The Devourer's Forge world. Hale turned sharply. We're going straight to their core. They found us through the signal, he said. It's time we return the message. Hours later, the fleet entered Devourer territory. It was like entering hell. A black sun burned at the center of the system. Not a real star, but an artificial one made of countless machines feeding on fusion itself. Around it orbited entire planets stripped of life, twisted into colossal factories. Each world glowed red, bleeding energy into space. Lena's voice trembled as she reported, "There are billions of them, sir. More than any biological species could build." Reyes didn't blink. "Then we'll teach them what biology can do." He turned to the communications officer. "Open all channels." A fleet-wide transmission went out to every ship, every soldier, every AI that still served humanity. "This is Admiral Reyes of the United Terran Federation. You were not born for peace. You were forged in struggle, shaped by gravity, by hunger, by fear. The galaxy called us Deathworlders. They were right, but today, that name means survival. Today, we fight for the right to exist." The reply came in waves, thousands of voices across the comms, a storm of determination. Even the automated ships answered with their old Terran motto, one that echoed back through history: "No mercy for extinction." The Armageddon fleet advanced. Their engines lit the void like sunrise. Missiles streaked through the dark, slicing across space like comets. Plasma batteries thundered from every ship, painting the blackness in white and blue. For every Devourer construct destroyed, 2 more emerged. But humanity's formation held. Sector 3 cleared, Hale reported. "Confirming Sector 4 under heavy fire," Lena added. "Valor and Hephaestus taking damage." Reyes moved between them calmly, eyes fixed on the tactical feed. "Reinforce with the Archangel Squadron. Use overlapping shields. Don't let them break the line." The fleet moved as one, precise, relentless, alive. The Devourers swarmed like locusts, their shapes bending light as they adapted. But they were facing something they couldn't understand. Coordination born from chaos, courage built on fear, and instincts honed by death. Then the Devourers changed again. From the black sun's surface, something vast began to rise. It wasn't a ship, it was a world built for war. A planet-sized construct wrapped in armor, with rivers of molten metal flowing across its surface. Lena gasped. "That's their core forge. The source of all the swarms. It's also their command center," Reyes said. "If we destroy that, we end this." The ship shook as enemy fire rained down. Hull alarms screamed. Shields flared with light. "Sir, incoming from every direction." Hale shouted. Reyes placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "We hold. We strike together." Then he gave the order that would echo in history. "All ships, full charge. Target the Forge world. Fire on my command." The fleet aligned, hundreds of ships locking aim at a single target. The silence before the storm lasted a single heartbeat. Now, space itself exploded. The combined barrage from the Armageddon fleet struck the Forge world like the hand of a god. Shockwaves rippled across the system, tearing moons from orbit, vaporizing entire swarms. The black sun flickered, its artificial heart breaking apart. When the light faded, half the system was gone. But so was the Hephaestus, and the Valor, and thousands of human lives, Hale whispered, "so many gone." Reyes' face was pale, but his voice didn't waver. "They died fighting what no one else could. Their fire lives in the stars." Lena looked up from her console. "Sir, the core isn't destroyed. It's collapsing inward. They're pulling energy into something." Reyes frowned. Something bigger. Before she could answer, a deep vibration shook the fleet, like thunder through space. From the ashes of the forged world, a new shape began to form, enormous, terrifying, alive, their prime intelligence, Hale breathed. The Devourer's true mind. Reyes stared as the shape emerged, a black sphere of living metal larger than any human planet. He whispered, "So, the real war begins." The fleet drifted, exhausted and wounded, as the new enemy rose before them. Across the comms, humanity's survivors waited for their next order. Reyes took a deep breath. "To all ships, we've seen what they are. Now they'll see what we can become. Prepare for the final assault." The stars burned brighter. The Armageddon fleet reformed its line. And across the galaxy, whispers spread through every frequency. The Deathworlders are coming. The void trembled. Before the Armageddon fleet hung the impossible, a structure the size of a planet, pulsing like a living sun. The Devourer's prime intelligence had revealed itself. A dark sphere of shifting metal and red fire, its surface crawling with millions of smaller entities, building and rebuilding endlessly. Every few seconds, a new swarm burst from its skin and scattered across space. Admiral Reyes stood in silence on the Vengeance's bridge. No one spoke. Every crew member watched the giant through the viewport, the embodiment of extinction, the enemy that had ended worlds. Commander Hale's voice broke the silence. "The swarm is reorganizing, sir. They're forming lines around the Prime, like an army." Reyes nodded slowly. "And we'll meet them like one." He turned to communications. "Open the fleet channel." The voices of hundreds of captains filled the air, rough, tired, and ready. "This is Admiral Reyes. We stand at the edge of history. Behind us are the worlds we swore to protect. Ahead is the end of everything. The Devourers believe they can erase us. Today, we show them the price of trying." Across the fleet, engines roared. "Weapons charged!" Humanity's last war began. The first wave struck. Millions of Devourer constructs rushed forward, a storm of metal claws and plasma. The Vengeance's cannons answered, unleashing pure white light into the swarm. The shockwaves tore through space, ripping enemy ships apart by the thousands. But the machines didn't scream. They didn't fear. They only adapted. Shields down to 70%. Lena shouted, "We're losing power in the dorsal batteries." "Divert from auxiliary systems," Reyes barked. "We hold this line." The Armageddon fleet formed a burning wall across the system. Every gun, every torpedo, every ounce of human rage turned the void into a sea of explosions. It was not a battle anymore. It was a firestorm. Space itself looked alive, glowing red and gold with the fury of 1,000 suns. But for every Devourer destroyed, another emerged. And in the distance, the Prime Intelligence watched and learned. Then came the retaliation. From the Prime's core, a beam of crimson light erupted, a lance of annihilation slicing through the fleet. 3 human dreadnoughts vanished in an instant, their hulls dissolving into molten fragments. "Sector 5 is gone," Hale shouted. "The Archangel and Dominion, they're gone!" Reyes gripped the console, his voice low but steady. "Then we make their deaths count. Bring us in close. Right to the Prime." The crew froze. "Sir, if we move that near—" "Do it!" Reyes roared. The Vengeance was built to kill gods. "Let's finish the job." The dreadnought surged forward, engines burning brighter than stars. It cut through the debris field, firing non-stop, its railguns hammering like the heartbeat of war. All around, fragments of other ships followed, smaller cruisers and escorts forming a shield around the flagship, protecting it from the endless storm. The Vengeance drove straight into the swarm, and the swarm broke. Inside the ship, alarms blared. Sparks rained from the ceiling. The hull groaned under the pressure. Still the guns fired. The engines screamed. Lena's fingers shook over her console. "We're almost in range of the Prime's core." "Good," Reyes said. "Prepare the Nova charge." Hale's eyes widened. "That's suicide, sir." "If we detonate that close—" "I know," he said quietly. "But if we don't, every world out there will burn. Humanity dies anyway." Hale's voice trembled. Then let me arm it. Reyes looked at her for a long moment. You've done enough, Commander. Get the crew to the escape pods. She shook her head. You'll need someone to push the final trigger. Their eyes met, the kind of silence that only comes before the end. Then Reyes gave a small, sad smile. Deathworlders to the end, huh? She smiled back. Always. The Vengeance plunged through the last layer of the swarm. Its armor peeled away, molten and cracked. Fires raged through its decks, but the ship refused to die. Before them, the prime intelligence filled the sky, endless, monstrous, glowing with red storms. Reyes stood at the command console, and hovering over the ignition switch. Target locked, Hale said softly. Ready on your mark. He looked out at the glowing abyss beyond the viewport. In his final breath, he whispered a single line, not a command but a truth. We were born in chaos, and we die unbroken. Then he pressed the switch. The Nova charge detonated. The explosion was beyond sound, beyond sight. A sun born inside another sun. Light swallowed the system. Every devourer within 1,000 kilometers was vaporized. The prime intelligence cracked apart, its core splitting open, energy spilling like blood into the void. The fire spread, jumping from one forge world to another, consuming the entire network in seconds. From far across the galaxy, other fleets saw the light, a burning scar across the stars. Humanity had set the sky on fire. Days later, the surviving ships drifted among the ashes. Only a handful remained, broken, scarred, but alive. The swarm was gone. The Devourer's signal had fallen silent, and the system where billions had died now glowed faintly, like a wound closing in the dark. Lena sat in the captain's chair, eyes tired, but proud. The Vengeance is gone, she whispered. But she did it. They did it. Hale's voice came through the comm, faint from another ship. The Admiral's last message is repeating through every relay. The galaxy is hearing it. She played the transmission one final time. To any who survived this war, remember this: we came because you called. We fought because we must. And when the Deathworlders answered an SOS, the galaxy burned. Not in hate, but in hope that one day no one will ever need to send that call again. The message faded. Silence returned to the stars. And somewhere in the empty void, the ashes of the Vengeance drifted, glowing faintly, like a promise that humanity would rise again if ever the darkness returned. Because in the end, the galaxy didn't just remember their fire, it remembered their name, the Deathworlders.